Hey everybody, how you doing? Good morning. This is TPIM SR Live. I'm your host, True Powers Mine. Today's date, June 28th, 2019, the year of our Lord. Today's topic, nationalism. Bad or good, you decide. Also want to remind everyone today at 5 p.m. Central Time, Dr. Stewart will be back with us. We're going to have an exciting show about things that are really happening today. So without further ado, what's up? Good morning, D. Top of the morning to you. Let's get down to it. Let's do the show.
How many of you are Hungarian? How many of you are Turkish? Back there. Most important, how many of you are American? Anybody from Texas?
Hey, good morning. 4144002300 days. Been a long time. Glad you can make it in. I like how he breaks it down in the very beginning. Who's this? Who's what? Because when you're really looking at this whole nationalistic ideal and concept, it's always about taking care of your own. And if that's where we're at, wars are inevitable.
Well, it can't be all good. Now, what's interesting about this is everybody who raised their hands knew they were Hungarians. The Turks knew they were Turks. The Americans knew they were Americans. And so all of you are in trouble, according to those who feel that nationalism is the problem. Because what is the root of nationalism? Drawing distinctions between human beings. And everyone who didn't raise their hands when I asked if you were Hungarian, you were drawing distinctions. You knew you weren't Hungarian. Now, there's a tension between the idea that nationalism is bad and the fact that you all know exactly what nation you belong to. So it's either bad that you know what nation you belong to, or something is missing. Let's talk about why nationalism is necessary, inevitable. And I want to talk about an idea called love of one's own. The interesting thing about the human race is you can't be born without a mother and father. They may have moved to Alabama, but they're still your mother and father. And if you don't have one of these, you'll die. Because until about the age of 4 or 5, at least, you can't exist without this person. So you become a human being after you were born. And without that nurturing, you won't become that. And what do you get from your nurturers, if you want? These days, I can't say mother and father because that's wrong. What do you get? You get to learn your language. You get to learn your history.
And you get your privilege or you get your discrimination. This guy only speaks half of the story. He goes down the road just so far, but he always stops short.
Your culture. You'll get to learn the things you should like. You'll get to learn the things you mustn't do. You may do them anyway, but you'll know what you mustn't do. You will receive your identity. Your identity is not somehow something you invented. At the moment when you learned your language, Hungarian, Turkish, English, whatever it is, you received a map of the world. And that map of the world is different from each language. It's interesting to consider how some words in one language have a completely different meaning in another. But the important thing is you learned your culture. And when you leave your culture, when you say, I am no longer a Hungarian, you do it in a very Hungarian way. Go to a bar in Shanghai, you will know who's an American. You will know who's a Russian. One right there. I knew that. The point is, this gives you identity. To say you're human, yeah, we're all human. But that's not enough to know. You must.
Honestly, that is just enough to know. The extra stuff is all the programming the system wants you or needs you to know so it can remain in power because we are divided.
Know that she's Russian and proud of it. She must know that I'm from Texas, which is far better than Russia.
And this is where he's using this little comedy bit. The whole crowd is non-melanated, so you got to understand once again this point of view that dude's using really isn't meant for us, but it still affects us.
And that I was born in Hungary, which is not as good as Texas, but still better than Russia. We laugh. But having been born in Hungary and having my first language Hungarian, and then growing up in the Bronx in New York, and then doing all the things I've done has defined me. And it's because of the place where I did it, the people I did it with, and that makes us different. We are not all the same. Okay? And that's important to know.
Yeah. When you want to keep your superiority and privilege and power, that's essential to know. Absolutely. That we're not all the same. Yet we're all human. We all have the same potential. But push that to the side. We're not all the same, right?
Now, this is what creates nations or villages or tribes or whatever.
Or hate groups or terrorist organizations or criminals in general.
And we've always had them. And it's not only that we celebrate them from the right, but this was the foundation of liberalism. Liberalism begins with one fundamental principle.
You should take the word liberalism and replace it with racism. Every time you say liberalism, think of racism.
The right of national self-determination. It is not simply democracy, it is democracy of the nation. So, liberalism invented two concepts.
Racism invented two concepts.
One concept was the concept of democracy.
Yeah, the concept that we can own people because they're property, they're not even human. And the second is
you get to select your leaders. And the other was the concept of the nation. Leaders of what? Of nations.
Or corporations. Let's face the facts, guys. There is no nations. There's no United States. There's no Russia. There's no China. There's none of that. It's just money. And that's why everyone is chasing the dollar so damn hard. Good morning, Brother Murder. Welcome to the show. Let's hear more what this gentleman has to say.
This is a fundamental thing that happened. If you go out by the river and walk upriver a bit, you'll see a statue to a man called Peter Fishandor. Now, Peter Fishandor, remember in Hungarian, names are completely reversed and confused. His name is Shandor, it doesn't matter. The guy was a poet. He wrote superb poetry. He wrote music. He was profoundly liberal. He believed in the universal rights of men. And he died to make Hungary free in 1848. Because in 1848, there was a massive political rising a massive political rising in Europe. And the demand was, I want my nation back. In most cases, they never had the nation, but now they wanted it. And the Poles rose, and the Hungarians rose, and the Germans rose, and all through Europe there was a rising. And the rising was for civil liberties. And the recognition was that unless there was a nation in which you could exercise civil liberties, you couldn't have them. The right to self-determination is utterly impractical to say we humans will all have an election because we don't even speak the same language. Nobody.
And that is all by design. Once again, that is by design. This is that greater system that I keep hinting and talking about. The people at the top do speak the same language. The people who are running the show speak the same language. The guy that can pick up the phone right now as I'm talking and cause the stock market to either go up or go down is talking the same language to the guy that can actually get nations to kill each other.
Who's not Hungarian speaks Hungarian. We don't know what it even says. The idea was that you had to create, instead of empires, vast conglomerations of nations, you had to extract the Czechs, the Slovaks, the Poles, the Hungarians, the Serbs. You had to take them out and let them have their own way. Why? Because the direction in which the English go may not be the same as the direction that Hungarians go. Why? Because they're different. They're born to a different language. They have a different history. They have a different relationship to religion.
That's his nice way of glazing over, saying that out of all of us Europeans, they're the ones who colonized all of us.
A dozen things that make them different. So if you're going to really practice the principle of national self-determination, the right of a nation to decide for itself what it's going to be, you have to have a nation.
Oops, there it is. Let that really sink in, folks. In order to have what he's talking about, self-determination, which is basically a nice way of saying freedom, liberty, you have to have a nation. That means you have to have a common language, you have to have a common tradition, and common cultural attributes.
And there was a natural basis for the nation. That was the language. What do they all have in common? They each have their own language. And in Eastern Europe, none can understand the other. That's why you all speak English. But the point is, love of one's own means that in a certain way, you love this language. Love the language not in the sense you chose it or the way you love your spouse. You love the language because it is the most natural thing you have. It's what you dream in. And if that's taken away from you, then what language do you dream in? So your nation, and Petr Fischander understood this completely, well, this was a nation we had to celebrate. Now, oppose this to the ideology of technocracy, which we now have. I want experts in charge who went to Georgetown University and has a degree, and he will tell us what to do because he knows. This is the idea of expertise. This was also the foundation of the great empires. I know what I'm doing, you peasants don't.
Nah, there it is. Isn't that the way it's set up right now for us? Our government officials know best, the nanny state. You peasants don't even know how to talk to one another, so we have to make laws about what words you can say. If you want freedom, if you want liberty, peace and power is about the only way to go.
It is incompatible with the notion of national self determination. Countries pick the people they want. That is the basis of liberalism. Ideally, the minority will respect that. I lost the election. Now, every election that my party lost obviously was stolen from me because I know that I couldn't have lost. I know I'm a popular guy. But that's not the point. The opera around it isn't the point. The point is that we live by the principle of majority rule and the majority respecting the rights of those who lost to try again, to try again, to try again.
That's bullshit. The majority over here ain't allowing nobody to try again, try again. Native Americans try again. Descendants of slaves try again. Please. The only thing they want is for you to work now, make them richer, and then die.
And it is the nation that decides the course it wants, not the experts. Experts are people you hire, usually you fire, or should. Experts are those that you bring in. They are not your rulers. The rulers are the people.
No. If the people who are most capable are not your rulers, then by default, the people who are going to be ruling are the people who've always been in power, who have the money, who have the wealth, and they're just maintaining their power. And they're using experts to help them shore up any shortcomings they may have. See, this dude isn't really talking about liberation or freedom. He is talking about the basics of the prison or the system that we find ourselves living in today. He's laying down a great foundation for that. If you understand that, then you can see in between the lines what he's really saying.
The Italians had an election. It did not end the way the people in Brussels wanted. Therefore, it was wrong. But the Italians chose. And this is the essence of liberalism. So the point I am making for you is this. Nationalism is not the opposition of liberalism. It is the essence of liberalism. If you do not believe in the nation and the right of national self-determination, you are not a liberal. And all the blood that was shed in 1848 was for nothing. Now, certainly, it sometimes leads to catastrophe. It wasn't nationalism that created Hitler. It was a madness of one country.
No, it wasn't. Stop lying, bud. You know exactly what created Hitler was the hate in the heart of humans. That all it took was somebody with a few sweet words. It motivated the hate-filled heart into horrible actions. And also, he was propped up by the German army as a spy, supposed to infiltrate nationalistic organizations. But instead of infiltrating them, he was converted by them. And the rest is, dare I say, easy bake history.
And without that madness, without nationalism, there would have been another madness. You cannot say that because of that, nationalism failed. Because if you say that, then you say liberalism failed.
And yes, it did. The Western version of liberalism is a complete and utter failure. All it's producing is self-absorbed evil people who forsake righteousness in all of its form, and they embrace death, from abortion to elderly euthanasia.
Because you cannot have liberalism without national self-determination, because it rests on majority rule. And if you take away majority rule, if you take away the right of the consent of the governed, you've taken away liberalism.
Now, let's put that another way. If you take away the rights of the people being discriminated against by the majority, then you take away the power of racism. You know, we can interchange these ism words all day long. It's almost as if they were created by, I don't know, a system.
It has problems, it has issues, and I know that every time my candidate lost, I had severe doubts whether democracy could survive, and vice versa. But that's not the issue.
And why would he be thinking about democracy if he's from Texas? Because, once again, you live in a republic. This is why this is the part that just keeps on not really baffling me at this point, but it lets you know what side of the fence people are really on.
The issue is what is liberalism? And the attempt to hijack the nation state and turn it into something illegitimate. This is a direct assault on liberal democracy. When the newspapers print, what are we going to do with the rise of the nationalism? The answer is live with it because it is us. Nationalism is liberal democracy. It is not a tension between the two, it is the same. And if you understand that, then you can solve the problem of the European Union. It is a collection of nations. And the collection of nations are in NATO. And if a nation wants to leave, it leaves. And that's what it is. But whether it leaves or doesn't is up to you, the voters, the citizens of your state, the country you love, because you can't find it any other way, which can never be subordinate to any emperor's or bureaucrat's will.
Yeah, bud. Until the boys with the guns and tanks rolls into your town, then all suddenly you could be subordinate like a champ. I want to bring this to your attention so that you understand that Europe is not necessarily the USA's ally. They have their own agenda and they have their own backstory. We might want to reconsider allowing Germany to defend herself because Germany has a history, a documentable history of when economic woes befall that nation's storm clouds gathers for weaker ones and they go military every time.
It is your country, and that is liberalism, and that's why you should celebrate it and not fear it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George.
You pointed you threatening. One of the things we talk about when we talk about racism is that he is threatening because he thinks differently, speaks differently. Islam is threatening because the way they treat women, the way they do things, they are different. What I am saying is that if you respect the right and demand the right to determine the way you are, you have to respect it in others. Because you also have to remember that someone might regard you.
Now, why don't he just tell it like it is? Racism isn't about respect, it's about maintaining power and economic viability. And that absolutely means that you can never look at another human being that's not in your so called race as a comrade, a brother, intellectual competitor. You can't, no, hell no. They are oppressed for a reason. You can bring God into it, uh, cursings, whatever to justify the hate, justify the abuse, justify the discrimination. But that's what it is. And this guy really falls short on his racism game, but his geopolitical game, it's okay.
That's profoundly oppressive in the way you do things and the way you think. So, yes, there are bad regimes. There is no question about that. But you have to be very cautious of doing two things. One, saying, yes, there are bad people in the world, but that's not the result of nationalism. They're taking it. And secondly, the reason we have so many nations is that people can live so many different ways. And that what you find oppressive may not be oppressive to someone else. Nationalism.
The reason why we have so many different nations because there has been no group, I don't care who you call yourselves, that's ever been able to conquer this entire world. That's the reason why. And the only reason why you have a little bit of freedom is because of these divides. But they're working on making it one world, one prison.
And if you're not strong enough to take it, not because you're too small, but your people are divided and they don't agree and everything else, then you haven't earned it. So, nationhood is not something given you, it is something that you take for yourself. So, my opinion is meaningless. I will not fight and die for courage. I will not do that.
And listen to what he's saying. He's not going to fight and die. Lonnie Jackson, perfect. Welcome to the show, but this is a perfect statement. If you want freedom, respect, and equality, you have to fight for it. It's not given to you. That's what the founding fathers of this country did. If not, this country still would be under British rule or Native American rule or Native ancient Kemetic rule. If that kind of makes sense. And then Nasser, welcome to the show, brother. I think he needs a history lesson on Christianity and how women have been treated. Well, women, black, animals. I mean, a lot of things been abused by a lot of religious systems.
You, I don't know if you're Kurdish, but you will have to do that. And if you are not willing to pay the price for nationhood, well, that's your decision. I can understand that.
Hold on. Let's repeat that. I want y'all to hear what he just said to this boy.
Not because you're too small, but your people are divided and they don't agree and everything else, then you haven't earned it. So, nationhood is not something given you, it is something that you take for yourself. So, my opinion is meaningless. I will not fight and die for courage. I will not do that. You, I don't know if you're Kurdish, but you will have to do that. And if you are not willing to pay the price for nationhood, well, that's your decision. I can understand that. So people come around and say, don't you believe in independent Scotland? Doesn't matter what I believe, it's what the Scots believe.
Now, oh boy here is telling them the truth. What's up, brother Derek? Welcome to the show. He's telling them the truth. He's telling them that it doesn't matter what my opinion is. It really doesn't. If you're not willing to pay the price, what he means by pay the price is potentially die or potentially kill for your cause, then you're not going to have anything. If that's what you're on, if that's what you're about your cause, you're about your nation, you're about your liberation, you're about your freedom. If you're not, if you're feeling that you're oppressed or discriminated against, if you're not willing to either kill or die for that cause, that state of being will never change. You will be born into it and you would die in it.
Is actually kind of changing due to a closer political integration of the European Union or more globalization. So I want to ask, what kind of nationalism or more like national identity do you think will prevail in the end?
These global citizens, what language do they speak?
Well, many different kinds of languages.
So I'm a global citizen, but most of the globe doesn't understand what I have to say. What religion do they have?
Well, many different as well.
So what I mean is there is a fantasy about a transnational liberalism, a place where I owe loyalty to everyone and to no one, which is a nice idea. But when the tanks come, and they eventually do, what are you loyal to? What matters? It is easy in a time of absolute peace and prosperity and the US Army deploying around you. It is very easy to say, I am a citizen of a nation. When someone becomes a soldier in the United States, he makes a pledge. I pledge to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, common and domestic.
Foreign
And
and
when you
domestic.
serve, you now have a moral obligation that you have freely undertaken. What are your obligations? So when I
Your obligations, hold on, we ain't gonna just glass past that. For one, he misquoted that at the end. You defend the Constitution against enemies, both foreign and domestic. Your obligation is to the Constitution and the Republic of the United States, period. That means the UN, any other global entity, is not your master. Your master is the Constitution and the common law of the United States of America. Let's continue.
when I hear about global citizens, I always ask, I understand what you have.
Good morning, Kim. Welcome to the show.
What do you owe? And who do you owe it to? And from my point of view, a life without duty, a life without a willingness to sacrifice is defective. And the framework of the nation permits you, you don't have to be a soldier. You can give in many ways. But you can't be loyal to everything because then I have to ask you, what does this loyalty mean? And the problem with the notion, citizen of the nation, as it works out, is a claim I am not responsible for anyone. I am living in Germany, and the tanks come running in. I'm not a German. I don't have to fight. So,
and that's the question you need to ask yourself about the illegal aliens. When the tanks come rolling into the United States, are they going to stand and fight with you, brother Derek? Are they going to stand and defend you, Sister Lonnie? What about you, Murder? You think an illegal who doesn't even speak English is going to be able to organize with you to fight off the enemy? What he's saying is so true on so many levels. What's up, Sister Janice? Welcome to the show. We have to have communication. We have to have common root ideals as far as what's right and wrong. And we have to have the will to carry this out. And I make no bones, guys. I am a believer in the ideal of the United States of America. I'm a believer in the Constitution of the United States. And I'm willing to ensure that all fellow other citizens out there would have the freedom, because I would fight for this nation, because I have no other nations to go to, guys. Straight up, I have no other nation to go to. This is the nation I was born into. This is the culture I grew up in. And I intend to fight and die here when the war comes. And it is coming. I hope you guys seriously understand the real life implications of this show today. Get it in your heads. What are you really about? Are you about freedom, liberty, justice? Not so much justice, because we haven't gotten none in this country. Very little freedom, very little liberty. And there's been a million of us that have died, paid the cost. But we're still not allowed to be our own personal boss. IRS is coming. You know it. Let's continue.
in other words, we have to understand citizenship as obligation. And one of the things that bothers me is all the dual citizens. If two countries go to war, which one are you with? But your position is you don't want war, and therefore there won't be war. And the point is that history doesn't work that way. There are decisions to be made. And the concept of this sort of non-militant nationalism is a way to avoid those obligations.
Damn. He did break it down to truth. You can sit here in Cupcake World all you want. You can fantasize and put on juju beads or whatever you got to do. But the war is out there. The war's been all over the landmass of various continents. And sooner or later, it will visit here as well. On the soil, on the land. I'm not talking metaphorically. I'm not talking cyber. I'm not talking trade war. I'm talking actual war. And we're being invaded by multiple countries simultaneously. I think it would be highly important for us to all be able to speak the same language, to all have some same sense of culture. And the reason why I say this is because we all know that's not what America's built upon. United States. It says it is a melting pot, but it's more like a crock pot full of crock. That's why the end is near. That's why the reason we are divided, the reason we are ununified, this should be called the ununified, the ununited states. Because there are some deep divisions in this nation.
You have someone else? Where do you draw the line between quote unquote good nationalism, what I would rather call constitutional patriotism, and bad, discriminatory, exclusionary, and often, as we see in history, murderous nationalism?
There's one and the same. You can't be in the moment that you say you're this nation, that nation, whatever nation, tuna nation, you are being discriminatory. You are already by default setting up a wall, a barrier, a line, a distinction. This guy's a fool who's asking this question.
For example, if people are escaping war and want to come to countries like Hungary and would like to become useful members of our society, if we tell them that sorry about that, or we tell without sorry, we want to keep it as a homogeneous society, is that part of quote unquote good nationalism, also in light of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or not?
So here's my answer. Ask the Hungarians. It's not my business. One of the essential things is I don't want you to judge my country, America. You can, I can't stop you, but I'm not going to respect you for it. The whole problem here is we have introduced this idea of good nationalism, bad nationalism on the face of national self-determination. The United States has limited immigration to the United States for over 100 years. I was an immigrant to the United States. I was very happy to be an immigrant to the United States.
Oh, I bet you was. You get all the benefits of that, Mr. Pinky.
But it was the decision of the United States of whether it wanted to do. That's part of the price you pay for national self-determination. Now, there's an idea that I completely support the idea of national self-determination so long as you vote for these policies.
Hold on. One thing I do want to say, I'm checking out the chat rooms. Hey, what's up, Justin? Welcome to the show. You know that California has just passed a law decriminalizing black natural hair, which is so beautiful. It's sad that you have to make a law to say you can't discriminate against people for their natural hair, which is, it should be like under just freedom in general. But that lets you know what time it is. You know, when you see these stories, people, oh, these women are fighting over hair and this and that. Because in many places in the country, it's still illegal. If a chick comes in there, oh, I ain't giving her no job. Comes in her dress, I ain't giving her no job. You see, the nation has a play. The nation has these standards. But the republic, you see, supposed to protect you from all that foolishness, but it doesn't, you, melanated friend. You know why? Because the system cannot fail you, Nasser, if the system wasn't designed for you. Brother Chris, a system cannot fail you if it was not designed for you. Sister Jackie, once again, the system cannot fail you if it was not designed for you. Let that really sink in, yeah.
Policies. But in fact, most of the world are countries I don't want to live in. They don't do what I want them to do, but they have chosen their path. There are,
once again, no, they did not, mister. The world is colonized. Most of the countries that he doesn't want to live in, what our president would call shithole countries, are thoroughly colonized countries with a bunch of traitors and anti-human people running it, meaning that they're in positions of power by people who are running the world, and they're just running the country like a company. And some of the so-called advanced nations would appear to give the common citizen or individuals in its borders more pretendo freedom. There's no such thing as a free country on this whole damn planet. This planet is colonized, period. And until you accept that fact and realize and ask yourself this one question: how does this planet being colonized by the people it's presently colonized benefits me, the individual? Ask that to yourself.
a certain point when what is needed is an uprising. When the United States reached a point when they could not tolerate the British and their oppression, they rose and fought. The problem we have in the world is we want somebody else to do it, some other intervention, some organization. So, from my point of view, there's a vast array of possible regimes.
Hold on, let me jump to the chat room. Brother Paul. Sister Lonnie, you got it exactly. But Brother Paul, what's up, TMP? What do you think about Yvette Cornell, Antonio Moore, and the ODS movement? I think it's basically a modern day 60s type deal where basically nothing's going to come from it. There's not going to be no fruit in it. It's too divided. The person who started is a lesbian. It's more the system, Paul. Let me just say it like this so I don't get demonetized. Because I haven't used the F word all show. It's more the system dividing you. Who needs fucking any of that if we actually could participate on a full scale in the promise of the United States, meaning that we can have all the benefits attributed to, say, the guy that's talking right now on the video over there about how he was an immigrant coming here in the 60s, did quite well for himself only because he was non-melanated. We got to get to that point. Because all these other countries, just like he says, they're not going to fight and die for your cause. They're not going to fight and die for my cause. And sadly enough, brothers and sisters, many of us will not fight and die for our cause. Therefore, we have to accept that and move forward with a different strategy and different tactics.
That remain decent, that other people wouldn't want to live in. I'll give you an example. Here in Hungary, there's a question of whether or not the judiciary is being changed. Okay. We had a very similar situation in the United States. In the United States, the Republicans had held the White House for a very long time, and none of the judges wanted to leave. And all they were blocking Franklin Roosevelt.
Hold on. The Republicans really didn't. If you really look at it, it's always been 2 terms, one party, then 2 terms, the next party, then 2 terms, the next one party, then 2 terms. It's been like that for the last 40 years.
New Deal. So Roosevelt had a wonderful idea. I will increase the size of the Supreme Court to be 15 people, all Democrats, and it'll work. Now, it was stopped and everything else. Hard to say that he was a fascist. He was facing a political problem, and well within the framework of the American concepts, he tried an end run, as we say, on the Constitution. I think he was not a fascist. We are too quick in condemning, even in our own country, natural political processes, or more precisely, assuming that the processes that are carried out in other countries are the only reasonable ones. I want to say one thing. I have as my standard, because my family came from Hitler. You have to go a long way before you get there.
Really? Really? So all the brothers and sisters who've died in this country just because of their skin color, that's not going all the way, huh? Because we ain't gonna get no reparations. Obviously, dude here's talking is a Jewish Holocaust survivor, so he got a check. And this goes back to what you're talking about, Paul. How can he get a check for 12 years of abuse and bloodshed, but the average black man or woman in North America can't get a check for 400 fucking years of getting kicked in the fucking ass? Sorry about the language, y'all. But every time I think about that thought, it's infuriating. It let you know what Sister Lonnie just said exactly. The system is doing what it's supposed to do. So you keep on talking your crazy shit, keep on talking, get a couple pop fucking guns, and get your ass fucking murdered. Or else you can get with it, fucking get that brain over here a thinking, and come up with a viable fucking tactic to where we survive and we thrive. If not, then fuck it. Let's just fucking keep on with the clown show.
And short of that, I would have been very happy having Germany as it was. We have to understand and
hear what this fool just said. As long as Hitler and them wasn't killing me, I was cool with Germany. No matter who the fuck they kicked in the ass. Let's listen to him again. Let's play this shit again.
I want to say one thing. I have as my standard, because my family came from Hitler. You have to go a long way before you get there. And short of that, I would have been very happy having Germany as it was. We have to understand.
Did he just say, as long as Germany didn't kill my people, I was cool with that shit? That's what he just fucking said. But yet again, he's getting reparations from Germany and the United States, is he not? All you get, brothers and sisters, shut the fuck up about slavery and move the fuck on. Shut the fuck up about Jim Crow, move the fuck on. Shut the fuck up in general and just move the fuck on. Here's your mop, here's your fucking bucket. There's a shitty toilet, clean that motherfucker. That's what they're saying. Let's continue.
And this is the hardest thing of all in philosophy, that if you really have moral principles, the highest must be toleration. And that means you are sometimes appalled by the government. There's a limit, but that limit leads you to war, and you're willing to fight it. If you're not ready to do that, let's just talk.
Damn. If you're not willing to, I have to calm down. This is too early. My blood pressure doesn't need it. They fear no consequences from black people because, Nasir, hold on. Let me just play this one little second here. Just listen to this part right here.
If you really have moral principles, the highest must be toleration. And that means you are sometimes appalled by the government.
Like, when, they fucking advocate lynching people back in the 60s and all that. That's appalling. All right, let's continue.
There's a limit, but that limit leads you to war, and you're willing to fight it. If you're not ready to do that, let's just talk.
It's just talk. It's just talk. I don't care how you slice up this pie, brother, sisters. I don't care how you slice it up. At this point, it's all have been just talk. And people who are trying to do anything farther than just talking, like the folks up in Philadelphia in 1985, yeah, they try to go past the talking point, and you saw what happened to them. They dropped the bomb on me, baby. They dropped the bomb on me. Kaboom. So keep on talking with that old funny shit that's going to end up getting people fucking killed. That's what's pissing me off. Is that all these people talking this military talk and people who are falling for it are just getting their asses in a hole that they will not be able to get out of. And then many brothers and sisters who have nothing to do with the bullshit is going to be taken out all the same. Let's continue.
So the question is, some might say that it is fair or just for nations to self-determine their existence, but when they do that in the boundaries or in the borders of countries that are constitutionally trying to protect that, then usually that results in conflict. So how do you see this in European context, not other contexts?
Well,
in West?
Well, why would he say European? This whole damn program's been from a European point of view. So why point that out now? As if this guy would give you any type of information on any other group.
Western or Eastern Europe?
The United States had a deep constitutional crisis over the question of slavery and the question of tariffs.
There wasn't no crisis, other than from the point of view that, we don't want to give these people personhood so that they can actually compete against our children. That was the only crisis there.
600,000 Americans died fighting over this issue. We didn't want it settled by the English. We didn't want it settled by the French, by the Spanish, the Chinese. This is ours to settle. If you feel so strongly that the Constitution must be preserved, rise up. So my point is that we can have a wonderful discussion of what is just and unjust. But the measure of injustice is what those who feel is unjust are prepared to do. If they're prepared to make speeches, that's one thing. If they're prepared to go to coffee houses and complain, that's another. Perhaps you'd stop dating a girl that had different views. These are all possibilities. But I will hold up the United States as an example of how you settle deep moral issues.
Oh, stop it. Ain't nobody selling nothing, no shit over here. Sister Janice, black people will be massacred. 13% of the population and growing. We got to get tactical. Michelle, welcome to the show. Black people have been getting massacred for over 6,000 years. I don't know if 6,000 years is quite accurate, but yes, I would agree for a very long written time as far as history is concerned. Obviously, the massacring wasn't too effective. We're still here today. But of course, they didn't have the benefits of automation like they do nowadays. You better get with it, man. You had better get with it. The shit's coming. Let's continue.
Based on a constitutional issue. And one of my issues of the EU is, how many people do you know who will die for the EU?
Couple, yeah.
Yeah, 600,000 died to determine the moral state of the American regime.
Yeah, but that was 600,000 people back in the day where they really had no place else to go. They couldn't just jump on a ship and roll the fuck back to Europe. So they're kind of stuck on America, uh, or in the United States of America, rather. So they had to fight. We're not, see, this is why I keep on telling, when people be using this history, like in the way that he's using it, it's so deceptive. Everything has changed. So many paradigm shifts have changed since the fucking Haiti Revolution, since the fucking Civil War, since fucking World War II. So many things have changed, except for the evilness in men and women's hearts to harm other human beings. But now they got more advanced tools to do it. Of course, we have theoretically more advanced tools to fight back against it. But when you really contemplate that, you understand, no, the weapons you have to fight against is the same weapons that allows them to track where you're at.
We are seeing that the world is getting centralized more and more, whether that's technological or political or regulatory. Do you think the world may be heading towards a one world government, one totalitarian?
Of course not, you fool. You haven't listened to anything this man fucking said. Before you can have one world government or one whatever, you have to have one language, and we're far from that.
World government?
No, I don't see the world getting more centralized. I hear a lot of people talking about the world getting more centralized, but you've never been to Hayes County, Texas. In other words, the internet has decentralized us in a massive way. The government of Europe is less and less capable of managing the situation. When we look around the world, there is a massive decentralization. And yet we constantly believe it's becoming more centralized. Interesting.
It's becoming more centralized in the fact in the aspect that companies like Apple and Google, which are basically loyal to the Chinese military, are becoming more powerful. I mean, think about the things they censor on Facebook. Think about the things they censor in your day-to-day activities on the streets. This is the problem.
In general, however, it's not. And more importantly than that, all of the technology that's being developed, the political philosophy that's emerging, is undermining existing institutions. Here in Europe, you can see what 10 years has done to the European Union in undermining its authority, its legitimacy, and everything else. So your basic premise, I think, is wrong.
Based on your statements that nations need to protect themselves and rise up, you're fan of war, you believe in the war, so people must to die just to protect the nation. That is the only solution.
I don't believe in war, it's there. So the problem of war is nobody gets to vote. The other one side can start it. Is that the only solution? Well, for the Americans, for the British, for the Germans, for the Hungarians, yeah, it was. So when the Hungarians faced the Russian oppression in 1956, they did something, not perhaps the wisest thing. They rose up and they fought and they died. And they did because Hungary meant something to them and it was linked to their lives. This was not a terrible thing in the sense of, yes, it was terrible for the lives lost, but it was also a beautiful thing, a willingness to stand. The problem that I see in much of the intellectual world is a willingness and deep commitment to talk. But when it comes time to act, well, who will act? War has not been abolished. It is a constant presence in human life. It has always been a constant presence in human life. It is, along with the family and the economy, it is the most ubiquitous event of human life. So this, we have to understand why this is so. It is easy to say that families are bad. My family wasn't that great. But why do we fight these wars?
For power and control. Sister Coleman, this European system has been in place since the inception of the United States. They have their Aryan hitmen on speed dial. Alan Bird and others have died trying to tell us the truth. And yet, no one's willing, like old boy said, stand up and fight. Willing to talk, make speeches, make books. Hell, Lifetime movie will make a movie about it. A real tear jerker. Hell, everybody from the 70s remembers Roots, right? You remember how many fights happened? You know, Roots come on Friday nights, right? That Monday at school, people are fighting like a mug. This is all by design of the system. It's all to keep us, brothers and sisters of the human race, divided. As long as I can keep believing that I'm one thing and you keep believing that you're one thing, we're never going to go against the guy who's raping us economically. We never are. We'll just try to be sycophants to him. Oh, master, I'll go and kill this guy. Oh, master, we'll go and build bombs. To kill each other, but never the source. Never the source. What's up, Sister Alexandra? Welcome to the show. We have to get our minds right. Because like this dude says, I mean, I don't agree with a lot of what he says because it's coming from a certain point of view. The essence of it is right on. But like he asked, oh boy, about the European Union, how many people are willing to die for that entity? How many people is willing to die for the U.S. Federal Reserve? How many people are willing to die for British Petroleum, Standard Oil? How many people have died in Gulf War? How many people are dying right now in the streets of the United States over drug transactions? Because it's all tied together. There is a war quite literally happening right now. But we fail to see it because we don't want to see it and we don't want to believe it because we don't want to have to get committed and choose a side. But I'm telling you, folks, as sure as the sun is shining right now in these United States of America, the war that is to come, whether you decide to choose a side or not, it's irrelevant. Whether you want it to happen or not, it's irrelevant. Whether you feel it's necessary or not, it's irrelevant. And more than likely, due to the fact that you're vastly outnumbered, totally divided, totally dysfunctional, you're going to die. Or you can try to leave the country. What's up, Sister Sandra? Welcome to the show, sister. Peace and power and love and light to you. I don't get pleasure saying these words. In fact, it pains me. Nationalism, that's the topic for today. Is it good or bad? You decide. Let's finish up this video here.
One of the many reasons is that in these wars, we actually take responsibility and go beyond the comfortable cliches. Now, that's not enough of a reason to go to war, but I've not noticed any major lack of reason. War is here. As Leon Trotsky said, you may not be interested in war, but war is interested in you.
And that's sad. The war has already begun, brother. Yes, sir. I've always asked my grandma, this is from Brother Chris. I've always asked my grandma, what did we ever do to them, meaning white folks? You merely exist, Chris. That's enough. You got to understand when we're dealing with hate, the irrational notion of it, you're always going to have casualties. And unfortunately, brother and sisters, there's many of us out here are casualties of this war, where we're spiritually dead, physically disabled due to some sort of beating or incident. What's up, brother War? It's been a long time. Glad you made it. But I want to leave you all with this one thought right now. Because it's a pre-gone conclusion, this world will basically, until automation fully comes out, not really be unified in any way, shape, or form meaningful, other than maybe some sort of economic ties. The most powerful group in the future, and mark my words on this, the most powerful group of the future is going to be like a Nazi-style structured organization, but it will be populated with all the so-called races of the world, and they're going to be working on what they deem their new manifest destiny. And the beautiful thing about this organization, this group of people, is because they are comprised of all the so-called races, they can easily infiltrate all the other groups, sending back vital information to their hub, thus ensuring their future and security. While all the, I guess, single raced organizations or countries or nations are going to suffer. Because one irrefutable natural law that no organization, nor no higher level organism can dispel is the need for biological diversity. You can only screw your brothers and sisters for so long before you really start having some messed up offspring. Whether they have psychological damage from malformed brains, or there's DNA that just keeps on being churned over and over, just peters out. The one group of the planet, if you're using evolution to describe all the groups, that shows the ability to go the long haul would be the melanated race. For all the other races came from us, yet we still continue to roll on. Now, there's been a couple of hiccups. The birthing, or not birthing, but the breeding centers during slavery, where they were forcing melanated men and women who were genetically related to sleep together to procreate more slaves. But underneath natural, I guess, situations, or people allowing or having freedom or whatever, most melanated people choose not to fornicate with their blood relations. Genetic annihilation, how could that be, Nasser? Think about what you just said. Just really think about it. How can it be genetic annihilation if they come from us anyhow? How can you annihilate something that you create over time? That's a myth designed by the system to justify separation. If all human beings, and I say if, using science, evolution, if all human beings ascended from the same, then that means, in essence, or let me say this in layman's terms. If all human beings came from black folks, then in essence, all human beings are still in black folks' blood today. All it takes is apparently the proper environmental conditions for these attributes to manifest, whether it be the slanted eyes, the pale skin, the straight hair, whatever. It comes from us. So if anybody is annihilating any genetics, it would be the offshoots of the original, whether it be artificially done or naturally done, destroying the genetic information of the original by becoming the new entity or the new organism. I had a conversation the other day with a gentleman, confidential informant on the phone. The guy's a little out there, all right, but I'm going to share this one thought that he shared with me. About 6,000 years, an individual with blue eyes, blonde hair popped up in basically Europe. Every human being with those traits, the blue eyes, blonde hair, is traced back to this individual. This man told me that individual was a time traveler. Stop it before you guys let me just complete it. The reason why he came back from the distant future is because apparently all the melanated people were wiped out. The non-melanated people kept on breeding, but because the melanated folks have the base source code, meaning that we have all the genetic material or information to keep us viable for eternity. Once we're removed off the planet, then basically it was a downhill genetic slope. And that's why they had to create this time machine to send dude back so that their race or their people could basically survive. So what's happening here is we're having a time loop. Something happens, we get annihilated, white boy rose, wins or whatever, rolls on, but because of the natural law of biodiversity catches up to him, his ass has to jump into a fucking time machine, go back into the time, and replay it over and over because he doesn't have the genetic material to carry the long haul eternity. Brother Chris, that's why they hate you. Goes back to the rule of power, 48 rule of power. If someone possesses something that you cannot possess, you despise that individual and you hate them. Brothers and sisters who are melanated, whether you love your skin your skin is telling the universe, it's telling everyone around you who can see, who has eyes to see, that you are the long haul. You are the life force for humanity. Once you start realizing these natural fundamental truths about who and what you are, you get a certain peace that no one can take from you. But you also get a certain passion that will not be quenched until justice is served. We got a long ways, brothers and sisters. And even though I told you the information what I shared with you just now, don't give up hope. If it is our destiny to be removed from this planet, then so be it. But I, for one, will not go quietly into the night. I, for one, will not go quietly without sharing truth with my brothers and sisters. And I pray that you share truth with others. Do not hoard this information. Do not hoard it. Share it. That's all I ask. And once again, for you young people who want to make a couple of bucks, please feel free to download my videos or just do the audio to it and put it up on your own channel. Get yourself a little revenue. Before I go, I'll show you the numbers on the old channel Rooney. Because like other YouTubers, they won't show you the how come someone didn't tell me the camera was so blurry? Oh my god. What good is showing you guys anything if you can't even see it? All right. Let's go to beta. Beta. Uh-oh. Okay. Yeah. Y'all here to bear witness. 2,900 subs. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all who decided to sub to the channel. Past 28 days, 1.3 million watch time minutes. Basically, the channel always stays about a million or plus every month. 50,000 views. The revenue for the channel, $192.02. Top videos of in the last 48 hours for the channel. You Can't Outrun the War, TPIM SR Live. Mark from Anaheim on the Carl Nelson Show. Next, it will be fired. TPIM SR Live. All I can say, yes, Janice. But that goes back to the natural law. See, you can be slick, sister. You can be conniving. You can be underhanded and unrighteous and appear to win. But in the end, that natural law will catch up with your ass. It always does. That's why it's so much better to be righteous, be sincere, and be humble. That's the virtue I try to live my life by nowadays. I have no time for hate. I have no time for jealousy. I certainly don't have no room for enviness, because I envy no one, because I know we're all collectively suffering and in pain in our own ways. I hope I've given you all something to think about today on a fundamental level. I hope I helped you to grow, perhaps even psychologically. But my sincere ambition, yes, sister Sandra, I am free. I love how that just popped up, man. This is, even though I know there's lag here, but that's just what I'm saying. But all I want is for you to all to be free, liberated, free to live the life that you want to live. If you want to decorate your house with crystals and energy equipment, yes. Or if you want to live, in a skyrise, do that, whatever. I want you to have the freedom to make the choices for yourself and not merely be a reactionary entity, just reacting from stimuli applied to you by outside forces. We do have the psychological and spiritual high ground. We just lack the economic and actual resources to manifest that power. And these things have been segregated from us for a reason. Out of fear and out of hate. And with that note, I hope that you all join me at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. I have a guest coming on tonight. It's going to be a great show. We're going to talk about power. We're going to talk about unity. We're going to talk about peace. And hopefully we'll talk about what we can do to better our collective conditions of all humanity. Because here's one fundamental truth. If we're all free, if we all have liberty, if we all have economic viability, we'll have a lot less pain and suffering across the board. Thank you, Sister Janice. Thank you, Sister Kimberly. And thank you for all the other chatters. This has been TPIM SR Live. I am your host, True Power is Mine. As always, live your life of integrity without hate, envy, or greed. Brothers and sisters, please let's try to be kinder to each other. Peace and power. I'm out of here.